Thank you. Winishi, y'all. Okay, good. I'm behind a podium. I feel like I should be giving a lecture on poetics, and I'm not going to do that today. I did that yesterday. And I'm also 3 feet tall, which is tall for my family. I'd like to say thank you, Winishi, to Words Aloud and to the entire community of Owen Sound, by the sounds of it, because you've done a great job showing how a literary festival can be put on by a community and not a corporation. So this has absolutely been a wonderful experience. It's my second visit here in 2 weeks. A week, 1 week. I was here last week for Kagadons for their big 30th. So you have an amazing literary scene in a beautiful city, beautiful region. So thank you for inviting me up, and what a wonderful bunch of readers I have to follow, and this kind of scares me a little bit. But I'm going to read from 2 books today because they're Kagadons books, and they're based locally. So I'm going to start, because I've been having little side conversations about Windsor, and that's where I'm from. For those that don't know me, I'm Lenape. My people originally come from the east coast of the United States. I'm now connected with Moravian of the Thames First Nation, just near Thamesville, Ontario. So we have a long history here. My family came up with Tecumseh's men in the War of 1812, or the war for our independence. It didn't really go well for us as Lenape, but that's the way it goes. So I'm going to start with some poems. Most of my work really deals with decolonizing a heavily colonized community, which is Windsor. We now refer to it primarily as Wawiyangatanong, which is the Odawa word for the region. My book, Go Down Odawa Way, really tries to refocus our attention in that area and the lands that we inhabit now back to the original peoples. The peoples that invited us here as Lenape to stay and have come in to welcome you as well. Well, you're not from Windsor, you're somewhere else. If you are from Windsor, hi. So let's start with this one. Our council fires shall burn. We live on in spite of city anthropological reports, digs for lost tools and pottery shards to prove settlers are doing right by memories of Owinik, sending remains to unceded land to watershed distance. We linger in the slow removal, still at pace 2 centuries in. Each paper, every shovelful of ancestor-rich soil, a glass bead glimmer of bureaucratic wishes that we are and remain myth like shoreline mastodons. Upon this roundabout land, cleared for a tribute to a warrior prophet whose words, deeds are co-opted for settler images of virgin land, cleared of Owinik, fought over between nations of thieves. Let us light the fire that burns within creation. Let it rise and mirror through the work of our hands, that it shall burn into our collective industrial night, announces our council's return. Speak to every way we wouldn't leave. I'm going to call this one out now, but you're not going to hear it yet. I'm closing with Bob Seger. So if you've ever known anyone from Detroit, we all worship Bob Seger. It's like on the radio all the time, and it was really sad when he finally retired. But I'm not doing that one yet. I want to take you to after a very dark poem, I like to go a little more lighter. So, like I said, Windsor, Detroit is Wawiyangatanong. It's one community separated by an imaginary border. So when I talk about my relations, they exist on both sides of the border. My downtown, because I often try to avoid Windsor's, is Detroit. So much of what we do every day is in Detroit. And looking around this gallery, this reminds me of my home away from home, which is the DIA, Detroit Institute of Arts. And it's really sort of, it's a magical place to sort of just wander and sort of take in all of this sort of stuff around us, right? But one of the areas around the DIA is Midtown Detroit, and it's one of the weirdest places you can sort of hang out. Third Man Records is there, so that's Jack White. There's a lot of cool coffee shops and bonbon stores and dog parks. But there's always these sort of moments in Detroit that makes you realize that it's a beautiful place full of stories that you can't even begin to fathom. So this is about one of the times when I was sort of walking down Ferry Street in Detroit, and a car pulled out of one of the back alleys. I'm going to leave it there and just read the poem. This is called Midtown Iguana. Little registers before the eastbound departure of a tempo. Stuffed iguana perched in the rear window, looking at the world hungry. The driver, too tightly collared shirt, 3-day bender scruff with cigarette pointed outward between two well-positioned hands on the wheel. And the iguana, one-time pet, surefire thrift store find, heirloom, stares boldly into midday sun, posture frozen in stride, proclaims in bow-legged sternness, creation needs to be told. No one can be strong and eternally famished. Before I came here today, I went down and sat by the fish ladder. I love the fish ladder. It sounds cool, and when people don't know what a fish ladder is, I imagine that the mental image is probably even more glorious than actually seeing the fish ladder. But I'm a poet who loves rivers. A lot of what I tend to talk about is rivers. So I would feel remiss if I didn't actually read you a poem about a river while I was here. This collection does have a series of sonnets to the rivers and streams around Windsor, Detroit, Wawayangatanong, and sort of giving them back their traditional names. Now, a little bit because they're in Unami Lenape, so we didn't really have sway over the land and the language back then. But this is sort of returning their names to it. Detroit has one very famous river called the Rouge River, Moxie Sipu. And the Moxie Sipu, much like the Cayuga in Cleveland, caught on fire quite a few times. I used to live in Dearborn, so I'd go to the river, and it's not a very... There's a really nasty part of it, and there's a really nice part of it. I always went to the nasty part, because that's what I can get to. Anyways, this is for that river. So this is Moxie Sipu, for the Rouge River. I come to you as you squeeze into the cement culvert bisecting the heart of Springwell's treaty land. At fence line, you stretch out to the horizons, beneath low-rise office buildings, straight as a slash of Chiexte's bite, still as moments after the strike. No, your destination arrives at an island of fire, constant grumble of angry earth. Above us, shopping cart rapids, slow to glass-topped rifle of water, wailing past weeds. Nemeshkwak burst skyward from cracks in constricting shore. And I'm going to give you one more from this book because, as we all know, North and Middle Island is the newest book. And it has a giant section about wrestling. Actually, it has a giant section about Rowdy Roddy Piper wrestling on Pelee Island. And maybe if you're lucky, we'll get to hear a bit of it. 16,000 words, so you won't get to hear all of it. But why wrestling? And we have to tell the story just rather briefly. Wrestling is such an absolutely massive thing in Windsor that I probably didn't really register until much later in my life. And I remember, this is a very recent thing, when I was sitting at my parents' dining room table, and they're still around, and they're in their 80s. And I was like, I'm writing this book about wrestling on Pelee Island. And my mom goes, oh, wrestling, well, your grandfather, Ivan, he wouldn't go to church. But every Sunday, they'd stay at home and watch wrestling on the television from Detroit. And I was like, what? Oh, yeah, your grandfather kicked out a bunch of priests out of our house. But wrestling was the real religion. So it goes back into the 1930s and 40s in our area. My buddies all love wrestling. When I come to visit them, they make me watch wrestling. And I don't really know wrestling that way. I know like Rowdy Roddy Piper and stuff when I was a kid. Maybe The Rock, that's the most. But this is for my buddy Drew, and he's going to get another poem in here because he's the best man at my wedding and everything else. But this is, there's a street in Windsor called Seminole. This is down Seminole after Mania 35. Spring descends warm, heavy in the gaps between road-top dry spots, cars resting beneath sparse streetlights. Our night shimmers in watery gauze that caresses and coaxes this end of Ford City free from winter. Warehouse shines the U-Haul Oracle to utilitarian single and 2 stories below it. Feel No Ways comes on Detroit radio. I turn onto Seminole. Combined skylines rise and are the constellation I plot my course homeward post WrestleMania 35. And every basement from St. Luke through Paulette is a vision of the world seen through the shadow-rimmed red eyes of looming morning shifts, knowing that each year we still bring spring so long as the last bell and pinfall happens on time. Time's passage measured in match bells, synchronized crowd chants, and how larger-than-life men balance before them on ropes designed to contain their ferocity. It is a good metaphor for the city, by the way. I'm a big fan of The Heel, which is... Does everyone here know who Roddy Piper is? Okay, well, that's good. So we're in the right place. That makes me happy. There's also a Border City Wrestling, and I want to give you one little bit of hype on somebody else's project. There's a book on the history of Windsor wrestling that's currently being written that will be released, and it's probably 500 pages long. If you really like wrestling and have some spare time, I'll give you all the information later. So let's move this. We're in a rural, beautiful place. Let's move this to another rural, beautiful place, and that's Pelee Island. How many people here have been to Pelee Island? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So obviously Owen Sound has a connection back to Pelee Island with the ferry. And everyone who goes to Pelee Island, well, most people take the ferry. Some people fly in, some people, I guess, boat in. But let's situate ourselves. For those that don't know Pelee, it's the southernmost township in Canada, at the Great Dirty South. And Middle Island is the smallest island just off the coast of Pelee. Middle Island is the place that the actual indigenous people lived. They went and spent the time there. Pelee was 3 islands. It's a bunch of marshes and lots of bugs. It's beautiful. I mean, minus the bugs sometimes. Let's open with talk of this place. So this is measurements. Our great southern nation has proclaimed the northern to be 2 feet higher, and the border runs through the neutral sea. That we lose 20 meters of gravel to a flood measured in years rather than fronts. We live in fear of measurement, how it can be layered upon the earth we walk. The lake will be more green than the earth where Zug meets Rouge. We measure fear by clear mornings. Tamakwe was spotted at the north end beneath a slouching lighthouse. Monarchs arrive like dogwood pollen. Pelicans have begun to eat gaga shivig. When the ferry arrives between windstorms and government austerity, we are certain that the measure of water between Westview and Kingsville is counted by the light reflected in the mirroring of all too human distance. Trying to get those last lines right. Thank you. There's electrical cords down there, and the old techie in me is freaking out when I put a water down. Sweet. Okay, no electrocution. So, I might as well get this other one out of the way. This is the poem that actually leads to the biggest part of this book. So, the biggest part of this book is, let me show you. That's the section there. That's one poem, and that's the Piper poem. And as I was on the island, you're on the island and really just trying to experience the island and try to figure out the stories that come from it. A lot of my work really does explore mythologies and how our mythologies come from the land, how they come from places that are unsuspecting, like wrestling, like Bob Seger, like iguanas in the back of a car. So, but they all have origin points. So we have a piece of plot of land on Pelee Island on the south side of the island. It's about 1.5 acres. And we don't want to build because it costs money and we'll probably kill a bunch of blue racers. So we bought a teepee. That's a great idea, right? Except for you realize that a teepee has poles, and the poles are absolutely massive. They're 17 to 20 feet long. And I own a Subaru Outback. Oh, no, a Subaru Forester. Outbacks, I believe, are longer. So I ordered this thing, and they throw basically the teepee poles in the back on the ferry, and then they just drop them at the dock. Now our property's quite a ways away. So I'm like, dude, I called my buddy Drew. We've been friends since we were in grade 1, and he's Indigenous, but he was adopted into a Scottish family. Didn't know that till much later. And I'm like, could you come to Pelee Island and help me move these teepee poles? Oh, he's in. He's so in, because he has a buddy on the island, get this, who was in his wrestling group. Now, he doesn't tell me this before we go to the island, so we go to the one functioning bar on the island, which is the Westview Tavern, and there he is drinking with the ferry crew. And as they're drinking, I'm just like, I don't drink, so I'm kind of bored. And they're like, hey, do you guys ever hear what time Roddy Piper came to the Pelee Island? And that was it. I just sat there going, he came here, apparently he filmed a romantic comedy. This is not a romantic comedy that was in here. But this the whole backstory was this is how we learned that Roddy Piper came to the island, and it's also a vision of two idiots trying to move giant teepee poles across Pelee Island. So this is collecting teepee poles from the Pelee Island Transportation Company for William Dwyer. Understand that they are lodge poles, all 17 of them. Kuahoke, imported to this Carolinian island from a stand outside the federal prison at Deer Lodge, Montana. These are the ribs that must hold canvas against sky. We collect them beside the warehouse at the federal dock. Between arrivals and summer storms, we pull in and load them atop a sputtering Subaru. Two Indians moving ribs of High Plains housing design onto land that has been forgetful of its indigenous past. This ringing early summer heat still left over from too many house beers with the ferry crew and tavern talk about visiting wrestlers, the tales they leave in their wake, truth and fiction. Our past lingers like the humidity of last night's storm. The transportation is simple enough, slow across the island's one paved road. The collection is what matters, done at speed, far too late into the day, and with an unearned confidence of two urban Noxons figuring out how to add a touch of themselves to the stolen land. And here's the unfortunate thing. So because we were the guys who moved the teepee poles, now every time I take the ferry, it's like, oh, there's the teepee guys. I'm like, where are you putting the teepee up? No, I'm going to go stay in a nice, comfortable bed and breakfast. Oh. They weren't never too happy about that. So I want to read something with a massively long title, just because I know Marty Gervais, who's Windsor's notorious poet, he loves poems with long titles. So this one's from Marty. We're talking a lot about Marty and his poetry at the Manor recently. What a cool thing to have in the city, what a good ally. But this one's just sort of for Marty. And it's actually, Pelee, like I said, is on the sort of border of the United States. So if you look across from Fish Point, which is on the south side, you see Middle Bass Island. And Middle Bass Island has a giant monument to the War of 1812. And I thought, as far as I checked, the Americans didn't win, but they celebrated the one battle they won, which is apparently outside of Pelee. And if you're there at night, you can see it. It looks like a giant purple phallus, which is sort of on brand. Anyways, our slow decomposition in the reflection of Perry's Victory Monument near the shore of Middle Bass Island. Perhaps the line begins where Perry's Victory Monument dissipates in the waves, reflecting still summer mornings, hangover of last night, its celebratory lights, robust foreigner tracks, the sluggishness lingers, prodded by gull cries, and the bob of Erie beneath, touching bottom, curling upward, outward, lines still not visible, Perry's statue unseen. Here, all the waters touch the Midwest beyond. What we touch becomes us. The gentle bob on surface belies a graveyard of settler ships below. Here, it is all water. What it touches, it takes, holds, blends horizon to sky, mirages of mountains, ghost ships, and you, eyes bleary, against early haze, witness it all wash away. Decomposition is slow, tireless, and cuts raw by the torment of gulls. Hunting for vanishing fish. Borders, monuments, our fleet passage here lost in the bobbing waters that touch bottom, reach for that morning fresh sky. I don't even know my time. Does anyone know what am I at? I mean, this is why Flavor Flav of Public Enemy wore a clock around his neck, right? So you could just look at. I got two more. I'm going to do two more, okay? And I think it would be mean to talk this much about Roddy Piper and not give you a little bit, right? You want to hear a little bit? Okay. So this was my worst nightmare in a lot of ways because when Kegadons asked for the book, I was like, oh, I got you the whole poem. It's all ready to go. No, I didn't. So I said, I got this whole Anglo-Saxon poem, and it's ready to go. Let's do the book. Okay. Well, it wasn't really ready to go because I needed to get the right, form and structure down. So this then turned into 5 straight months of me writing only in Anglo-Saxon verse. And I used Seamus Heaney. I used his translation, or I thought I did. And that's when I realized I used the original. It became even more messy. So it's Beowulf was the basis for it, and it was written in Anglo-Saxon. So I tried to put Lenape in English over an Anglo-Saxon framework to talk about Rowdy Roddy Piper wrestling Gold Dust. So for those that don't know, you can look it up on YouTube. It's a famous, it's the one that happens after the O.J. Simpson incident. So it's Rowdy Roddy Piper at WrestleMania versus Gold Dust, who was kind of an androgynous character. The things I do. Anyways, if we're going to do this on a Sunday afternoon, let's just do the grand entrance. The best part of powwows is the grand entrance, and the second best thing to the grand entrance at a powwow is a wrestling walk-up, right? Can we all agree? There's fire, and there's Chris Jericho. He had like things going off. Piper didn't have that. He had bagpipes. But anyways, let's do Piper's grand entrance to Pelee Island before we get to Bob Seger. Okay. Pelee Islander 2 sachets proudly around to the gentle water nearest gull rocks, slips into port with gentle thud, guests meet land. Ivan rests on bench with Carrie Ann, beholds another landing, hopes this arrival holds him, Elia, to make war with the malefactors. Mechanical chatter cut by gull cries, repetition of water on shoreline rocks, the parade of cars commences. Arrivals pour from the ferry's belly, and the buzz of itinerant cars, people from shore to shore, bagpipes, chorus from pickup speakers. Rowdy Roddy Piper descends the ferry ramp, early match card entrance with namesake music. These green hills of Tyrol proclaims their Ilya has arrived. Shuffling people pay little heed to the Piper's raucous entrance, spare an empty nod, a side smile at his slow roll in his truck, windows down, wheeling past ferry company office. Ivan connects gaze with Piper, recognizes his living legend before him. Grand saint of Piper's pit, vanquisher of the snooka, tamer of Adonis's mane, master of the sleeper. Piper was known to all the people's churches, adherents. Sunday service, regular, body and spirit, and now living, truck-driving Savior landed here, entering as if one grand seasonal entrance. They watch as he slow rolls his way to the Westview Tavern, the new gathering point across from the dock, awaiting Aweenic arrivals, and on a rare occasion lamenting some regret-filled departures. Carrie Ann stands fists. First, insist Ivan follower. He is hesitant. Concerns over heroes, real-life failures of dreams one holds for living, breath-drawing figures of romantic wars. She repeats Irma's vision, says creation has made the paths they walk. True gifts are those that are prayed for. To fear them is the forced rejection of blessings, an acceptance of a curse, betrothal to the darkness as it finds a new dwelling. That's good enough. I just want to get you a taste. The reason why I don't want to read it right now is because in our culture, in Lenape culture, we have winter stories and we have summer stories. And if you say the winter stories in the summer, the nits will get you. And the nits are little bugs, they bite you. Winter stories are stories about heroes and overthrowing evil. We can read them personally, but don't read them aloud. That's a little bit of superstition. Us Lenape are a little superstitious. So, let's end with this. Are you ready for some Bob Seger? Does everyone like Bob Seger? If you don't, leave. No. Bob Seger's greatest song he ever wrote. Anyone know what that is? I'll tell you what. You tell me at the end of this. How's that sound? So if you're from Detroit, actually if you're from anywhere around here, I love the road. I'm a poet of the road, of the rivers. I guess roads are rivers to an extent, right? You don't grow up in the Motor City and not love this stuff to an extent. So this is really about cruising, and that's what we did a lot. When we lived as youth, we would drive around Detroit. There may have been cannabis involved. There may not have been, but there was always music. And Bob Seger always got it right. So this is Gospel of Seger, Traversing the Great Black Swamp. For those that don't know, the Great Black Swamp, I also have to tell you this, followed the Maumee River. It was one of the most important ecosystems in the Midwest. It's why Lake Erie now turns green, because it filtered all of the nasty water coming down from Fort Wayne, into Lake Erie, and now that it's mainly farmland, it's kind of a mess. But this is Gospel of Seeger traversing the Great Black Swamp. Let lightning roll over top farm fields, shatter open this night, christened by thunder beings, flash exposing dried earth alongside two-lane blacktop. Roll in the gospel singers, that their chorus of punctuated sweetness shall lighten the burden of how an aging man can come to accept memories of that which will never return. Waiting on thunder, awoken in night, taken to cruise southward to places so many were forced to surrender to lesser men. South through the dark sky belt, once demarcations and porous edges of marsh large enough to obfuscate survivors of a stolen confederacy. State lines that played front lines to a war between lesser governments, the goal that we drift towards, carried by sweet memories of what once was. Monroe, Tecumseh, Perrysburg, Luna Pier, Maumee County, look for and fail to find names of familiar. We live beneath the banner handed us from fractured nations, still water, move upon the land at speed. The Gaussian blur pulls what should be from what is. Roadside pullouts and mats of phosphate-fed algae appear as fresh carpet of forest floor. Bison prints from passing herds, electric hum of life before pioneer-treated soybean fields, familiar as a hum before the MC5 break into a full-throated Dodge main holler of kicking out the motherfucking jams. Follow it. Seek out forests, still water, oceans of birds. Ain't it funny how the night moves, with autumn closing in, clouds visible only in passing and distant lightning. Feel that lightning and wait on thunder. As you cross before broad mechanical farm fields, none of this front page drive-in news, rather footnotes in the process of reclaiming lost things. Lost marshes, the lush darkness between forests, lakes, prairies, Jean, Stratton, Porter, the Miami, Lenape survivors transmutated. Through glyphosate-drenched fields and state-approved reflective signage, corporate food chains and electric hum of ancient lights, the way that the car cuts township lines, follows through treeless bean fields, glances junkyards, leads to the distant promise of city lights, all the while the quiet of an empty back seat. Happiness and faded warmth of a passenger seat emptied a lifetime ago. Each mile of cleared land declares, go down Odawa Way. Guide the sedan northward to the great bending shores between the lakes larger than seas. Make front page driving news. Arriving along spider vein freeways, this is home in the lands warmed in the afterglow of the second fire of the Medewan. At the bend in the shores between Manapoko, where the medicine songs rain down from thunderbirds, and Mipi never forgets. Working and practicing each line, each verse, each mile declares, I remember Winishi.